Part A, according to Wikipedia, under Placage, Placage. Listen closely. Quote, Placage was a recognized extra-legal system in French and Spanish slave colonies of North America, including the Caribbean, by which ethnic European men entered into civil unions with non-Europeans of African, Native American, and mixed race descent. Stop. Psalms 83, bingo. Why Psalms 83, bingo, you ponder? Well, for it to say, quote, by which ethnic European men enter into civil unions with non-Europeans of African, Native American, and mixed race descent, and not simply say civil unions with Africans, Native Americans, and mixed race descent, and seeing it is obvious if you are pure white European, it's impossible for you to be African, Native American, or mixed race descent, thus making the words non-European African stand out. And that can only mean there were non-Europeans living in Africa alongside clone Africans at the time. You know, the slave trader groups with an S we discovered earlier. Now wait a minute. Before you make the mistake and call me some type of a liar, surely by now you know that I know you are a stiff-necked and rebellious bunch. Hence, this doubt demon preemptive strike of simply touching the blue icon that says non-European. Once you ever so lightly tap it, Wikipedia redirects the page to person of color. Bingo. Listen closely. Quote, the term person of color today is used primarily in the United States to describe any person who was not European American or white. The term encompasses all non-white people, emphasizing common experiences of systematic racism. Example, and that can only mean, I told you it was a Psalms 83 gang bingo. So as you can clearly hear, once again, we have evidence of the white man marrying wives and having children who would eventually become the ancestors of your current leaders, mind you. But as you can plainly and clearly perceive, the white man had an alliance to marry and sire children with the different races with an S/nations that made up the slave trade groups of Africa. But let's continue for more clues if you don't believe me, shall we? Quote, the term comes from the French placer, meaning to place with. The women were not legally recognized as wives, but were known as placees. Their relationship were recognized among the free people of color as left-handed marriages. They became institutionalized with contracts or negotiations that settled property on the woman and her children, and in some cases gave them freedom if they were enslaved. Listen closely. The system flourished throughout the French and Spanish colonial periods, reaching its zenith during the latter between 1769 and 1803. Stop, bingo. I mean, to say, quote, and in some cases gave them freedom if they were enslaved, to me that can only mean when it's also said, quote, their relationships were recognized among the free people of color. The mass majority were already free, yet recognized among the rest of the free people of color. Before we continue, allow me to ask you a question, gentle strangers. Taking in account all that we have gleaned thus far, when it said, quote, The system flourished throughout the French and Spanish colonial periods, reaching its zenith during the latter between 1769 and 1803. What did you perceive? Who, me? Well, when I utilize everything I know into one thought process, in this particular case to mean the evildoers use war, distress, and disease to increase the population with new and fresh replicas, and when we understand the word zenith means the time at which something is most powerful or successful, meaning the operation was in full swing even before the, excuse me, let me say it again, meaning the operation was in full swing even before and after the zenith period. And when I factor in what Wikipedia told me when I looked under French and Indian War, and it said, quote, the French and Indian War, which was 1754 to 1763, pitted the colonies of British America against those of New France, each side supported by military units from the parent company and by American Indian allies. The European nations declared a wider war upon one another overseas in 1756, 2 years into the French and Indian War. And some view the French and Indian War as being merely the American theater of the worldwide 7 Years' War of 1756 through 1763. However, the French and Indian War is viewed in the United States as a singular conflict which was not associated with any European war. When I factor in all of that, to me that can only mean there is nothing new under the sun. In this case to me, our perfidious enemies mass-produced and flooded the landscape with shine-eye Lego Beast clone predators with their handlers and slaves in tow before and at the beginning throes of the establishment of the United States of America. Why seed the landscape with beautiful buxom babes, you ponder? Because the scriptures attest the men of Israel would be a whores in bondage, and through angelic counsel they devised a plan that looked normal to breed us out. Hence, why my God must preserve the chosen in this day. Saying that, let's continue with the original Plessis article, shall we? Where were we? Oh yeah, check out how many port of entry they used. Quote, it was widely practiced in New Orleans, where planter society had created enough wealth to support the system. It also took place in the Latin-influenced cities of Natchez and Biloxi, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama, St. Augustine and Pensacola, Florida, as well as St. Domingue, now the Republic of Haiti. Plessis became associated with New Orleans as part of its cosmopolitan society. Stop, bingo! So as you can clearly hear, just like in our black lover discovery in the state of Virginia in the midst of slavery, the exact same thing. But this time they had an assortment of brown sugar to choose from. But the exact same thing happened before and in the beginning throes of slavery in the North and South. But I know, I'm colored. And there's no way in Hades you're going to believe a feeble-minded, big-lipped, and self-hating, no-good snake in the grass colored like me. I got that. Let's continue, because the white man said it much clearer than I did. Under History and Development of the Plessis System. Listen closely. Quote, The Prestige system developed from the predominance of men among early colonial populations who took women as consorts from Native Americans, current free women of color that came to America from places such as Saint Domingue, and some enslaved Africans, adding to what was known as free people of color in Louisiana and especially New Orleans during the colonial years, from whom wealthy men would choose. Stop, I told you! So as you can clearly hear, the white man backs up our understanding of different races and shades of free, rich, slave-owning, and trading black women blanketing both the northern and southern American landscapes. And because they were already pre-programmed with a set of particular sexual skills, the miscongeniations of many bloodlines produced what Black America later called the Black elite, and white America called American middle class. You know, your highly educated leaders. Let's continue.